Hey guys, welcome back! In today's video I'm going to be taking you through the process of making a recent cat, and he is available up for adoption in my Etsy shop. You can find the link in the description. He's called Linux, the Marshwood tree cat. So stay tuned! Alright, like normal, I'm starting off with a black chrome acrylic paint, but you can use any paint whatsoever. And I'm painting up a resin cast that I have sculpted, moulded and cast in resin myself, and I'm just painting around the outside of the eyes, nose and mouth in that black chrome acrylic paint. You can use any acrylic paint, there's no requirements needed, and you don't have to be too neat about this as you'll be covering the face with fur. Now I'm just going to touch briefly on what resin is. It's a type of kind of like a plastic, so it's very sturdy, it won't break, and it's a lot lighter than using clay. But on the downside, resin is quite expensive, and also silicone is quite expensive, so something to keep in mind. Alright, so here's the bits painted up. I'm going to be painting the nose a pink colour, so that's why I haven't quite covered it in the black yet. Moving on to the eyes, and I'll be painting the eyeballs a cool red by the same chrome acrylic paint, and the body's going to be green, so I thought I really like the contrast of the red and the green together. So I'm just plopping on that colour. Looks like a bit weird right now. I normally don't do this, but for this red paint in particular, it's quite thin, so I like to get a good layer of that red paint on. So better to just put it on top of the eyeball. It's big enough, so why not? So you have to be a little bit more careful when you're painting around the eyes here. Not particularly with this colour, but any colour that covers well, just so you don't overwhelm the black outline that you've just done with that new colour. I guess there's one thing in keeping in mind while you're doing a thicker coat of paint is to make sure that the paint doesn't actually run off anywhere. So yeah, don't make it too thick because then you'll have a big sloppy mess all over the place, and we don't want that. Right, so I'll leave this to dry for a little while and I'll come back and do the eyeballs, the pupils. We got there in the end. So I use a dry brush technique for the pupil area, and it's just a matter of dabbing on layers with a drier brush, just to achieve a softer effect and not so harsh, so it doesn't look so fake. I mean, there's no right or wrong way of doing eyeballs, it's just something that I prefer to do. You can do a sharp one, it doesn't really matter, but I personally like this way a little bit better. I also tend to go around the outside of the eyes with that black paint again. It also helps to dry off the brush so you're not wasting any paint. And yeah, just to have a little tip there. And again, I'm just going to put those two little white dots on the corners of the eyes. I just think it adds a bit more of an effect and it makes it a bit cuter as well. Right, so I'm just going to go in and paint that little nose pink, and I'm using a Dervian Matisse acrylic paint, but yeah, again you can use whatever paint you want. It's just something that I had and found in a nice skin coloured pink. Now we'll end up going back over the nose with maybe a brown or a black, just depends how I feel once the fur's been put on, just to get a little bit more of a realistic effect and not so stark pink. Alright, there we have it. And this is the only doll that I've done with like a cutesy feature. It's not really up my alley, so I probably wouldn't do another cutesy little doll, but yeah, I like the effect of this one, so. Right, so this is the fur that I'm going to be using. It's a nice forest green Mongolian faux fur. I really like the effects of these faux furs, especially on these little kitten dolls that I do. Yeah, it's my favourite, definitely my favourite fur. So as you can see, I have already drawn out the patterns for the sewing machine and the body, and I'm just cutting it out, just cutting the backing again, not the actual pile of the fur, and that's just achieved by sliding the scissors in between the fur pile and the backing and just cutting the backing. I prefer to machine sew my dolls as much as I can, just because it's a bit stronger and, you know, a bit more durable rather than hand sewing things. I know a lot of other people hand sew, which, you know, you have to hand sew some bits, but much prefer using a machine. It's just so much more durable. Right, so after pinning the pieces to each other, facing the good side together, I run it through the sewing machine and I sew all of the edges together using just a straight run stitch, and here's what it looks like. And also I'll just run through hand sewing as well. So there's some bits that you can't run through this machine, it's just too small and too hard to flip over on itself. So there are some bits that you will have to hand sew. So right now I'm hand sewing the tail piece because it's just too small for the machine, and I'm using a straight ladder stitch, and you can see that I'm going one stitch one side and the other stitch the other side. It's a pretty simple stitch, and I just tie off a lot while I run through the stitch, just in case I break the thread, which I do all the time. And also, just a nice tip is to pull out any fur pile you have stuck behind the stitch, just so it doesn't push the fur down and make him look a bit weird. So here it is. I've done the armature and attached the pieces to the armature. Now I haven't included how I make the armature because it's something that I've done and spent a lot of time developing. So I try to encourage everyone else to come up with your own armature work, so it's very unique to you, but I do use a 3mm thick galvanized aluminium wire to create the armature itself. And I'm just sewing up the little pieces that I couldn't run through the machine, and also the back end, so you can't really run that through the machine either. So I'm just sewing up the leg bits with that ladder stitch, and I really hate sewing, it's not my favourite thing, but, you know, a necessary part of the doll making process. I also use just a regular cotton from, I don't even know how to say the name, it's like Gutermann. Yeah, you do want a good quality thread, otherwise it's just a real hassle to get things sewn up together. And once we have sewn up the pieces and tied off the thread, I'm going to go in and attach that fur piece to the resin piece using a tacky fabric glue. I prefer to use a tacky fabric glue rather than like a Mod Podge or a super glue, as it has a little bit of flexibility, so it's not so harsh and plastic-like, but you can use any glue that will stick fabric to resin. And for the people in Australia, this glue is available at Riot craft stores for about $20 for the whole big bottle that I have there. Alright, let that dry and move on to the next leg, and I'm going to go with that same ladder stitch. I won't show you the whole process again because I've seen that before a million times, but yeah, sew it up using that ladder stitch. And then once it's tied off, going in with that fabric glue again, and I like to try and get the stitch that I've just tied off covered in glue as well, so it's just that extra support so it doesn't actually unravel or anything when you're posing the doll. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go through the furring process. It's again something that I've spent a lot of time developing. I may in the future do a tutorial, a paid tutorial with furring, but I'm really not sure at the moment. It's just something that I'd rather not show. That's it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any requests, leave it in the comments down below. And if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can also catch me on Instagram and Facebook at Creatures of Nat. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!